Hello there, this is Senris. In this video, we will be discussing the political ideologies of the various legendary lords in Total War Warhammer 3. Check out my video on the politics of Total Warhammer 2 as well, the link is in the description.
Excuse me?
I said we cut off your junction!
Before Kislev was a nuclear-armed superpower led by KGB gangsters and oligarchs which somehow lose conventional wars against their smaller and weaker neighbors, and before it was led by its people in the glorious United Kislev Socialist Republics, Kislev was led by the Tsar, or in this case the Tzarina Katarin. She is a powerful ice witch and the leader of the Ice Court. She is beloved by her people for the most part, although some people resent her because of the unending winter caused by Ursun's disappearance. As Tzarina, she is obviously a monarchist and believes in the divine right of kings and queens. She inherited the throne from her father, Boris Boka, also known as the Red Tsar. Unlike her father, who was both Tsar and High Priest of the cult of Ursun, she does not have the support of the Orthodoxy, and so she is mired in the political strife between the court and the church. She must gain the loyalty of her people if she is to unite Kislev's factions, save Ursun, and resist the onslaught from the realms of chaos. There lived a certain man in Kislev long ago. He was big and strong, and his eyes a flaming glow. Most people looked at him with terror and with fear, but to Kislev chicks he was such a lovely dear. He could preach the orthodoxy like a preacher, full of ecstasy and fire, but he was also the kind of teacher frost maidens would desire. Kostaltyn, the leader of the Kislev team, is the head of the orthodoxy. He believes matters of state are best left to the orthodoxy to decide, rather than the head of state. He believes that Katarin has failed her father in that she has failed the people of Kislev, who should put their faith in the church instead of a princess in over her head. Kostaltyn believes faith and devotion are much stronger weapons against chaos to save Ursun than court intrigue and politics. Unfortunately, he is one of the weaker lords and will probably get rolled by the Demon Prince before he can take Erengrad. Boris Ursus has a very special political ideology. He is apolitical, but in the true sense, not just a closeted right-winger that doesn't like feeling called out about his socially regressive views. No, Boris truly just doesn't think about politics, a state of mind me and many other politics-obsessed fools can only dream of. His campaign reflects this as well, as he just gets a corner of the map all to himself with no important factions nearby, and he can just have fun and paint the map. If you want to ignore the Realm of Chaos campaign, grab the Sword of Slaanesh on turn 40 and just fuck shit up and pretend you're playing Mortal Empires, he's your guy. Just rush a Warbear Rider Doomstack and go nuts. His personal stat line makes him one of the most powerful lords in the game, and you can basically auto-resolve any battle you want. A particularly humorous part of his apolitical campaign is that he doesn't care about the devotion mechanics at all, and can leave the Ice Court and the Orthodoxy to bicker among themselves, and then ally with, confederate, or annex whichever faction triumphs. He is probably the best campaign if you want to just ignore the complex politics of the Warhammer world and just have fun. On to Chaos Undivided. The Demon Prince was once a boyar of Kislev that journeyed north along with his brother to find what had become of his god Ursun and why he had forsaken Kislev. Along the way, he succumbed further and further to the lure of the Chaos Gods until he eventually accepted their blessings, killed his brother, and ascended to demonhood. Unlike other legendary lords with a static political ideology, the Demon Prince changes his regularly. One day he's a liberal, the next a fascist, and the next an anarcho-communist. He's basically the guy from that YouTube video about teenagers deciding to get into politics. I'll link it in the description for those of you who haven't seen it, it's funny and worth a watch. At the end of his campaign, the Demon Prince will have the option to choose between picking an ideology and sticking with it, or commit himself to radical centrism and reject all ideologies, but he will most likely avoid the decision entirely because he has no convictions, only a desire for integrating whatever political aesthetic feels good at the moment into his personality. Miao Ying is the Donald Trump of Total Warhammer 3. She wants to build the wall to lock up her opponents, and she thinks the Norskins are not sending their best. They're bringing marauders, they're bringing skin wolves, they're raiding, and some she assumes are good units. Miao Ying has managed to convince a bunch of poor peasants that by fighting for her, they will be sticking it to powerful elites who use the blood of children to retain their youth, despite the fact that she is a powerful elite that uses her power as an immortal dragon to retain her youth. She has done a shitty job of uniting Cathay, and now the country is fractured into several different camps, most of which hate her, and so her approval rating hovers around the mid-30%. Zhao Ming has a very different political philosophy from his sister, instead preferring to lie low and focus on trade and diplomacy with neighbors as his power builds. His main focus is on the Ivory Road Initiative, which builds financial and infrastructural cooperation between his neighbors, or in some cases allies and trading partners on the other side of the map. Even though he is the leader of the Communist Party of Cathay, his faction is labeled state capitalist by liberals, state socialist by anarchists, and a fascist dictatorship by debate bros. In reality, Zhao Ming is just a dude that knows he holds all the cards and just needs to sit tight while the Western powers fall to corruption and chaos. His rise to power is all but assured at this point, and he looks forward to being the next hegemonic world power. Greasus Goldtooth is a socialist that just wants to make sure all of his people are fed, have stable lodgings within his camps, and to live lives of dignity and freedom. He is a uniting force among the ogres, many of whom will flock to his banner in a true show of left unity. Between contracts with other factions, trading with other ogres and Cathay, and the great income from Tier 5 camps, he has one of the strongest economies in the game, which of course goes towards raising the standard of living among his people. In fact, the ogres quickly reach a state of post-scarcity around turn 50, where they don't have to worry about meat, growth, or money because of their powerful armies and economy. Unlike the human factions, Greasus can even get along with chaos, making him one of the most beloved lords in Total Warhammer 3. If anyone is going to unite the Warhammer world in a communist revolution, it is Greasus. Skrag The Slaughterer is also a communist like his comrade Greasus, but he is much less concerned with building a strong communist bloc in the world and more concerned with eating the rich. Literally. He is waging a protracted ogres war against the Empire, and if he can keep the ogres on his side, he can easily annex all of their lands. Too easily, in fact. His campaign is so easy that it's actually less fun than a lot of the others because nothing really challenges you until you run into Kislev halfway through the game. Given the strong start locations, economy, and units the ogres have, I think they should be the recommended starter campaigns, as Katarin and the Demon Prince are beset by enemies on all sides from turn 1 and have way more mechanics to worry about. I wish defeating capitalism was this easy in real life. Skarbrand is a George W. Bush-era neoconservative journalist. He kick-started his career by penning op-eds on how the Empire must invade Khemri because they have weapons of mass destruction, and only white people are allowed to have those. When it was revealed that these countries did not have weapons of mass destruction, Skarbrand shifted the goalposts to, okay, so maybe they didn't have weapons of mass destruction, but we must continue the invasion and occupation and various other war crimes because Cetra is a dictator. After Cetra was assassinated, Skarbrand wrote more articles about how the Empire must now stay in Khemri for at least 200 more turns and continue to shoot Hellstorm rocket batteries at the local population because 1 in 10 salvos manages to kill a unit of skeleton spearmen. In truth, Skarbrand had never met a war he didn't like and just wanted blood for the Blood God and skulls for the Skull Throne. He knew the pen was mightier than the sword and that manufacturing consent for war among the liberal populace of the Empire would lead to more bloodshed than he could ever achieve on the battlefield. These days, he is on the board of directors at the Lincoln Project and writes articles about how World War III wouldn't be that bad actually. Kugath Plaguefather is an anti-vax parent that deliberately got all of his children infected with COVID-19 and thinks we should cancel all health measures related to it because we're all going to catch it anyway. He argues that it's just a little cold, that lockdowns and mask mandates are bad for the economy, and that it only kills like 1% of the people that catch it. If you point out that that means that 78 million people would die, he will reply that that is the cost of freedom. He spends a lot of time on Facebook warning other parents that vaccinating their children will make them autistic and gay, which is sadly more scary to many parents than the prospect of their children suffering from respiratory and cardiovascular disease for the rest of their lives. Kugath is a big proponent of the lab leak theory of where COVID came from, not because of the evidence pointing that way, but because he thinks the idea of humans manipulating viruses which infect one species into infecting even more species and becoming way more contagious is fucking sick. He hates Grand Cathay because of their zero COVID policies, and he is earnestly looking forward to the Nurgle variant of the virus that will inevitably pop up as mask mandates are lifted over the next few months. Nikari is a pretty milquetoast liberal and a public school teacher, but unfortunately he teaches in Texas, and so the parents of his students think he is some kind of horribly immoral communist monster. He provides a welcoming classroom and a safe space for his LGBT students, and so the parents think he is turning all the kids trans and giving Fs to the straight resistance. He makes a point to have the class read books by black and indigenous authors, and so the parents think he is brainwashing them into becoming postmodern neo-Marxists. He assures all of his students that they can come to him with any issues they are having at school or at home, and he will listen and try to help, like all good mentors should, and so the parents think he is trying to induct his children into the Communist Party of China. Due to recently passed laws in Texas, Nikari will likely be arrested for child abuse due to not disclosing one of his students is trans to parents who would rather have an ostracized homeless child than a trans one. Kairos Fateweaver is a proponent of a political phenomena I call Tzeentchian centrism, which is basically being a centrist or moderate regardless of how the political winds of change are blowing. This ideology relies on having no serious convictions or lines in the sand about anything and just disagreeing with both the far left and the far right at any given time regardless of the Overton window. The best examples in contemporary politics are boomers that were anti-war hippies in the 70s that became neocons during the Reagan era, moderate liberals in the Clinton era becoming bloodthirsty for war with Afghanistan and Iraq after a bunch of Saudis did 9/11, or resistance liberals being open to the idea that the police are white supremacist gangs that should have their toys taken away after the murder of George Floyd under Trump, while applauding the State of the Union speech about giving cops more money under Biden. It's kind of weird how these people that disagree with the far left and the far right always side with the far right. Due to his rough start position, lack of conviction, and proximity to powerful enemies, he will likely be blown up by Cathayan rockets if he is lucky, or eaten by communist ogres if not. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and stay tuned for the next one. I've got a few projects on my plate right now, including videos about the politics of Frostpunk, Metal Gear Rising, and Breath of the Wild. Let me know which you would like to see the most in the comments below. Peace.